Marcus pressed his back against the cold brick wall of the Starbucks on 5th and Market, his cardboard sign propped against his knees. The morning rush surged past like a river of expensive shoes and coffee cups, and he'd learned long ago to read the current. The woman in the red heels wouldn't look down. The businessman checking his phone might toss loose change without breaking stride. The college kid with headphones was already gone, lost in whatever music made him believe the world was something other than this. Spare change. Marcus's voice barely rose above the traffic noise. He'd perfected the tone, not too aggressive, not too pathetic. Just enough humanity to trigger guilt, but not enough to demand engagement. His territory. He'd claimed this corner 3 years ago after Jimmy Fingers got arrested for public intoxication. The spot pulled in maybe $40 on a good day, enough for 2 hot meals from the bodega and a night at the shelter when the temperature dropped below freezing. But lately, the new guy, some kid with a dog and a veteran's sign, had been encroaching from the west side of Market Street, and Marcus had noticed the drop in his daily take. Scarcity, that was the iron law of street life. Only so many corners, only so many generous passers-by, only so many beds at the gospel mission. You got yours or someone else did. Marcus shifted his weight, feeling the dampness seep through his jacket. November in Philadelphia brought the kind of cold that lived in your bones, the kind no amount of layered clothing could defeat. His sign read, "Homeless and hungry, God bless," the letters fading after months of rain and sun. He tried different messages. Veteran pulled better, but he wasn't one, and the real vets could smell the lie. Will work for food made people uncomfortable with the implication of deserving versus undeserving poor. The morning crowd thinned around 9:30 and Marcus counted his take. $11.47, below average for a Monday. His stomach clenched, not just from hunger but from the arithmetic of survival. Breakfast burrito, $3.50. That left $8 for the rest of the day. Coffee to stay warm, another $2. The margins were always too thin, the math always working against him. "You're sitting in it wrong." The voice came from his left, where an old black man stood watching him with eyes that seemed to catalog everything. The stranger wore layers like Marcus did, but somehow wore them differently, not with the defeated slouch of the street, but with an almost regal bearing that made the mismatched clothing look like a deliberate choice. "Sitting in what wrong?" Marcus kept his voice flat. "Street wisdom, nobody gives you something for nothing. Your scarcity." The old man smiled, revealing surprisingly good teeth. "You're wearing it like a wet blanket, pushes people away." Marcus felt anger flash hot in his chest. "You got something to say, old man, or you just here to critique my begging technique?" "Name's Samuel." The stranger settled onto the concrete beside Marcus without invitation, his movements fluid despite his age. "And I'm not critiquing, I'm observing. You believe there's not enough, so that's exactly what you get." "Yeah, no kidding, there's not enough." Marcus gestured at the street. "You see any billionaires lining up to hand out $100 bills?" But what Marcus discovered next would shatter everything he believed about survival. Though he didn't know it yet, watching this strange old man pull out a thermos and pour coffee into the lid like they were having a picnic in the park, instead of sitting on cold concrete that smelled like piss and old rain. Samuel offered the cup. Real coffee, steam rising into the November air, and Marcus's hand moved toward it before his brain caught up. Another rule of street life: nothing is free. Everything has a price. "What do you want?" Marcus asked, not taking the cup. "To tell you a story," Samuel said, "about a man who thought the whole world was a pie, and if someone else got a slice, there'd be less for him." Marcus laughed, bitter as the November wind. "Sounds about right." "Except pies don't work that way," Samuel continued, those sharp eyes fixed on Marcus's face. "Not when you're talking about thoughts. Not when you're talking about the stories we tell ourselves about who we are and what's possible." "Look, old man." 23 years ago, Samuel interrupted, his voice taking on a different quality, "I sat exactly where you're sitting. This same corner. Different Starbucks. It was a bank back then, but same corner. Same cold. Same emptiness. Same math that never quite added up. Marcus found himself looking at Samuel differently. The bearing. The coffee. The way he inhabited the street without being diminished by it. I had a daughter, Samuel said quietly. Rebecca, 10 years old when I lost my job at the shipyard. Laid off with 300 other men when the contracts dried up. I had a wife, Gloria, had a house in Fishstone, not much but ours. Had a life. He paused, sipped his coffee. Had is a heavy word, isn't it? The morning crowd had shifted to the mid-morning lull. A few tourists wandered past, camera-focused, seeing through Marcus and Samuel like they were part of the urban furniture. I spent 2 years looking for work, Samuel continued. 2 years watching everything dissolve. The house went first. Then Gloria, can't blame her, really. Then Rebecca went to live with her aunt in Baltimore, and I told myself it was temporary, just until I got back on my feet. His laugh had edges. That was 23 years ago. Marcus felt something shift in his chest. Not quite sympathy. The street burned that out of you, but recognition. The way a man falls wasn't always dramatic. Sometimes it was just a slow erosion until the ground disappeared beneath your feet. What changed? Marcus heard himself ask. Samuel's smile transformed his face. A man named Joseph asked me the same question you just asked me. What do you want? And I gave him the same answer you gave me, suspicion wrapped in survival instinct. He set down his cup. But Joseph was patient. He kept coming back day after day, asking me questions that made no sense. What kind of questions? Questions like, what if the universe isn't pie-shaped? What if it's more like a garden, where the more you harvest, the more grows back? Questions like, what if scarcity is just a thought you're thinking and thoughts can change? Questions like, what if you've been so focused on not having enough that you've made it impossible to receive anything? Marcus snorted. Sounds like New Age bullshit. That's exactly what I said. Samuel's laugh was genuine. Called him every name I could think of. Told him to take his philosophy and his questions and get the hell away from my corner. He leaned back against the wall. But he kept coming back. And one day, when I was so hungry I couldn't think straight, so tired of fighting for scraps, so done with the whole damn thing, I decided to try what he suggested. The secret Elder Samuel revealed about abundance thinking changed Marcus's entire reality. Or at least, it would, once Marcus stopped resisting long enough to listen. But resistance was its own kind of armor, and Marcus had worn his for so long he'd forgotten what it felt like to stand undefended in the world. Try what? Marcus asked, hiding the curiosity in his voice but unable to suppress it. The simplest exercise in the world, Samuel said. He asked me to sit here, right on this corner, and for 1 hour, just 1 hour, see everyone who walked past not as a potential source of money, but as another human being on their own journey. No agenda, no sign, no cup, just sit and witness. That's insane. You'd lose a whole hour of income. That's what I said. Samuel slapped his knee. I told Joseph he was crazy, but he asked me how much I was making per hour on average. And when I did the math, it was maybe $5 an hour, some days less. And he said, is $5 worth staying exactly where you are for the rest of your life? Marcus felt the words land somewhere deep. $5 an hour, maybe 6 on a good day. The price of stagnation measured in pocket change. So I tried it, Samuel continued. One Tuesday morning I put away my sign, put away my cup, and I just sat here watching people, really watching them. The tired single mom rushing to work. The businessman whose shoulders carried more weight than his briefcase. The young couple holding hands like the world couldn't touch them. And something happened. What? I remembered that I was human too. Samuel's voice went soft. I'd spent so long seeing myself as less than, as other than, as outside the stream of normal human life, that I'd forgotten I was part of the same species as all these people rushing past. And when I remembered that, Really felt it in my bones, something shifted. Marcus wanted to dismiss it, wanted to retreat into cynicism like a fortress. But something in Samuel's face, in the way he told the story, suggested this wasn't bullshit. This was testimony from the other side of something. The next day, Samuel said, I came back with my sign and cup, but I came back different. I looked people in the eye. I said good morning. I blessed them whether they gave me money or not. And you know what happened? What? My daily take tripled within a week. Samuel let that sit in the air between them. Not because I'd found some trick or scam, but because when you stop radiating desperation and scarcity, people respond differently. They feel it. They see you. And some of them help. Marcus shook his head. That's just psychology, marketing. You figured out how to work people better. Maybe, Samuel allowed. Or maybe there's no difference between inside and outside. Maybe what you think and feel creates what you experience. Maybe scarcity and abundance aren't facts about the world, they're facts about your mind. A police cruiser rolled past slowly, and both men instinctively stilled. The cop gave them a long look but didn't stop. When the car turned the corner, Marcus released a breath he hadn't known he was holding. I should get back to work, Marcus said, but he didn't move. Tomorrow, Samuel said, standing with that same fluid grace, try the exercise. 1 hour. No sign, no cup. Just sit and witness humanity, including your own. See what happens. Why do you care? The question came out harder than Marcus intended. What's in it for you? Samuel's smile was enigmatic. Joseph asked me to pass it on when I found someone ready to hear it. Maybe you're ready, maybe you're not, that's your choice. He paused. But I'll tell you what Joseph told me. Your life will change exactly as much as you're willing to change your mind. Not one bit more, not one bit less. That's when Marcus made a decision that seemed insane to everyone but himself. Though decision was too strong a word for the strange pull he felt toward Samuel's challenge. More like a drowning man's grab at a rope he wasn't sure was real. The rest of Monday followed its familiar script. Marcus made another $18 by evening, enough for dinner and nothing else. He ate his burrito standing up at the bodega counter, watching the clerk watch him in the security mirror, making sure he didn't pocket anything. The shelter was full, so he found a heating vent behind the library and wedged himself against the wall with his backpack as a pillow. Sleep came in fragments, interrupted by cold and the sounds of the city and the endless calculation of survival. But between the fragments, he found himself thinking about Samuel's words, about scarcity as a thought rather than a fact, about the garden versus the pie. Tuesday morning brought rain, the cold kind that found every gap in your clothing and lived there. Marcus's usual corner offered minimal overhang, and within 20 minutes he was soaked through. The morning crowd moved faster in the rain, heads down, no eye contact. By 9:30, he had $4.60. Samuel appeared at 10, materializing from the rain like some kind of urban prophet, carrying 2 paper cups of coffee from the bodega. Thought you might need this, Samuel said, offering one. The coffee was hot and sweet, and Marcus hated how grateful he felt. Gratitude was another luxury he couldn't afford. Did you think about the exercise? Samuel asked. I thought about it. And Marcus looked at his meager earnings. $4.60. The rain showed no signs of stopping. His feet were wet, his back ached from the heating vent, and the whole day stretched ahead like a sentence to be served. 1 hour, Marcus said, but if this is some kind of con. It's not. Samuel settled beside him against the wall. I'll sit with you if you want or leave you alone, your choice. Marcus found himself nodding and then, feeling ridiculous, he tucked his sign behind his backpack and turned over his cup so it was clear he wasn't soliciting. The absence of his tools felt like nakedness. Now what? He asked. Now you watch, Samuel said. See each person as a full human being, their struggles, their dreams, their fear that they're not enough, their hope that tomorrow might be better. See yourself in them, see them in you. The first few minutes were excruciating. Marcus felt exposed, purposeless. His hands didn't know what to do without the sign. His eyes kept wanting to assess potential marks. But Samuel had said 1 hour, and Marcus had committed, so he forced himself to actually look at the people passing by. A woman in her 50s, exhausted, carrying grocery bags and defeat in equal measure. Marcus recognized her. She worked checkout at the Acme 2 blocks over. He'd watched her count coins carefully when she bought her own lunch. She was one wrong paycheck from where he sat. A young man in an expensive suit, phone pressed to his ear, stress radiating from every gesture. Whatever he was negotiating, he was losing. His shoes cost more than Marcus made in a month, but his face held the same fear Marcus wore. Different stakes, same terror. Two college students walking close together, laughing at something on a phone. Young enough to still believe in invincibility. Marcus remembered that feeling before the layoff, before the DUI, before the long slide that had no bottom until suddenly there was nothing but concrete. What happened next proved that mindset isn't just psychology, it's physics, though Marcus wouldn't understand that until much later. For now, he just watched. And as he watched, something strange began to happen. The people stopped being potential sources of money and became people. Complex, struggling, hopping, fearing, loving people. And in seeing their humanity, he felt his own. The hour passed. Rain kept falling. Marcus's phone, an ancient flip phone he kept charged at the library, told him it was 11:15. "How do you feel?" Samuel asked. Marcus took inventory, still cold, still wet, still broke, but something had shifted like a locked joint moving for the first time in years. "Different," he admitted. "I don't know how to explain it." "You don't have to explain it, you just have to notice it." Samuel stood. "Same time tomorrow." "You're leaving." "I have somewhere to be, but you're ready for the next part." "Which is?" "Put your sign back out, resume your position, but keep the feeling you just found." Samuel smiled. "See what happens when you ask from abundance instead of scarcity." It sounded like nonsense, but Marcus found himself nodding. When Samuel left, Marcus positioned his sign, turned his cup right side up, and settled back against the wall. But instead of the usual resentment and desperation, he tried to hold onto the feeling from the hour of watching. The sense of shared humanity. The recognition that everyone was struggling with something. The next person to pass was a businessman Marcus had seen 100 times, usually walked right past without looking. But today, Marcus met his eyes and said, "Good morning. Hope you have a blessed day." The man stopped, actually stopped, looked at Marcus like he just noticed him for the first time, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a $10 bill. "You too," the man said and walked on. Marcus stared at the bill. $10 from one person, more than he'd made all morning from 20 people. Coincidence, he told himself, random chance, but something in his chest felt lighter. By the end of the day, Marcus had made $63, his best Tuesday in months. He wanted to believe it was luck, whether random variation, but he couldn't quite convince himself. That night back on the heating vent, Marcus found himself thinking about gardens and pies, about scarcity and abundance, about the possibility that the story he told himself about the world might actually matter more than the world itself. Wednesday brought Samuel back with coffee and questions. "Tell me about your best day on the street," Samuel said. Marcus thought back. Maybe a year ago, Christmas season, I made almost $100 in one day. What was different? Holiday spirit, I guess. People were feeling generous. Or, Samuel suggested, you were feeling hopeful, and that hope changed how you showed up. He sipped his coffee. Joseph taught me that we're always creating our reality through the story we tell about it. Most people think reality creates the story. I'm poor because the world is unfair. But what if the story creates the reality? What if you're poor because you've decided the world is unfair? That's blaming the victim, Marcus said hotly. I didn't choose to lose my job. I didn't choose to have no safety net. I didn't choose this. True, Samuel acknowledged. You didn't choose your circumstances, but you chose what those circumstances meant. You chose to make them mean I'm finished. You could have chosen to make them mean I'm beginning. The secret elder Samuel revealed about abundance thinking changed Marcus's entire reality. And this time, Marcus was starting to believe it might actually be true, even if he didn't want to admit it. How did you go from sitting on this corner to? Marcus gestured at Samuel's bearing, his confidence, the way he moved through the world. Samuel was quiet for a long moment. It wasn't quick, took me 3 years of practice, but Joseph showed me that abundance thinking isn't about denying reality. It's about choosing which reality you focus on. I don't understand. Right now, sitting here, you're cold, hungry, broke. That's one reality, but you're also breathing. You're alive. You have use of your limbs. You have a mind that works. You experienced kindness yesterday when that businessman gave you $10. Those are also realities. Abundance thinking means choosing to build your story from the second set of facts rather than the first. That sounds like toxic positivity, Marcus said. Like pretending things are fine when they're not. Not pretending, choosing. Samuel leaned forward. Every moment you get to choose what you focus on. You can focus on what's missing or what's present. You can focus on what you've lost or what remains. Both are true, but only one opens doors. Marcus wanted to argue, but yesterday's $63 sat in his pocket like evidence he couldn't explain away. What's the next exercise? He asked instead. Samuel's smile widened. You're ready for the hard one. Great. I want you to give something away. Marcus laughed. I have nothing to give. You have coffee right now. You have time. You have attention. You have the ability to see another human being and acknowledge their worth. Samuel stood. Find another person on the street, someone worse off than you, and give them something, doesn't matter what. The act of giving from a place of scarcity rewires your brain to understand abundance. That's insane. If I give away what little I have, you'll prove to yourself that there's more where that came from. Samuel's voice went firm. Scarcity hoards, abundance shares. You can't think abundantly while acting scarcely. The action teaches the mind. After Samuel left, Marcus sat with the instruction like a puzzle with pieces that didn't fit. Give something away when he had nothing. It violated every survival instinct he'd developed. But he'd committed to trying Samuel's way, so he forced himself to look around. Down the block, he spotted Sheila, a woman in her 40s who usually worked the corner by the transit station. She was soaked through, shivering, and her sign was disintegrating in the rain. Marcus felt his feet moving before his mind agreed. He walked down the block, his rational mind screaming that this was stupid, that he needed every dollar, that helping someone else was a luxury he couldn't afford. Hey, Sheila, he said when he reached her. She looked up, suspicious. Street rules. People didn't just talk to each other unless they wanted something. I got extra coffee this morning, Marcus lied. You want it? He held out the half-full cup Samuel had brought him. Sheila's face went through confusion, suspicion, and finally cautious acceptance. Yeah, thanks. Stay warm, Marcus said, and walked back to his corner feeling lighter and more foolish in equal measure. The afternoon brought more rain and fewer people. Marcus made another $40, but the money felt different somehow, less desperate, less heavy with significance. That night Marcus found a spot in the shelter. The guy next to him was new, 19 or 20, terrified of what street life meant. Marcus found himself talking to the kid, offering advice about safe corners, which shelters had the best food, which business owners would let you use their restrooms. The kid listened like Marcus was dispensing wisdom instead of survival tactics, and in that listening, Marcus felt something shift again. He had knowledge. He had experience. He had something of value beyond pocket change. Thursday morning brought Samuel and a new challenge. "Today," Samuel said, "you're going to bless everyone who passes by. Out loud or silently doesn't matter, but you're going to genuinely wish them well. Even the ones who ignore me." "Especially the ones who ignore me," Samuel corrected. "They're the ones most trapped in scarcity thinking. They ignore you because acknowledging your humanity would crack their story about who deserves what." Marcus spent the next hour blessing everyone who passed. The woman who sneered at his sign, "May you find peace." The businessman who deliberately crossed the street to avoid him, "May you feel less afraid." The young couple who looked through him like glass, "May you never know this life." And something shifted. The blessings changed how he felt. Instead of resentment at being ignored, he felt compassion for people trapped in their own fear. Instead of anger at their judgment, he felt sadness that they couldn't see past their stories. By evening, Marcus had made $72. He bought a real dinner, not a burrito, but an actual meal from the Vietnamese place on Market. While eating, he realized he'd stopped calculating survival and started calculating possibility. What if tomorrow was even better? What if the pattern continued? The thought terrified him more than poverty. Hope was dangerous. Hope could break you when it proved false. Friday brought the test. Marcus arrived at his corner to find the kid with the dog. The one who'd been encroaching from the west had moved directly into Marcus's spot. Prime location, already set up with sign and dog, and that homeless veteran story that pulled heartstrings and dollars. The old Marcus would have confronted him, would have asserted territory through intimidation or appeal to street rules, would have seen this as theft, as competition, as someone taking what was his. But Samuel's lessons sat in his mind like a new program running on old hardware. There's always enough. The universe isn't pie-shaped. Scarcity is a thought, not a fact. Marcus took a breath and walked up to the kid. "Hey." The kid tensed, ready for conflict. "I got here first, man. Fair is fair." "I'm not here to fight you," Marcus said, surprising himself. "I'm here to tell you there's a better corner 2 blocks south. Less foot traffic but way better demographics. People who work there are locals, not tourists. They walk by every day. If you give them good energy, they become regulars." The kid stared at him. "Why would you tell me that?" "Because I'm trying something new," Marcus said. "I'm trying to believe there's enough for both of us." The secret elder Samuel revealed about abundance thinking changed Marcus's entire reality. And in that moment, teaching the kid, Marcus felt it click into place. Not as theory, but as lived truth. The kid didn't know what to say. "Finally, what's the catch?" "No catch, just pass it on someday when you can." Marcus walked to the corner he'd just given away. It was true that the demographics were different, fewer people but more locals. He set up his sign and cup, but his heart wasn't in it. Instead, he found himself watching the flow of humanity and blessing everyone who passed, just like Samuel had taught him. By noon, he'd made $43, less than his usual corner would have pulled, but enough. And more importantly, he felt different. Felt larger somehow, like giving away territory had expanded rather than contracted him. Samuel appeared at lunch with sandwiches. "I heard what you did this morning." "How could you possibly?" "Word travels on the street, you made an impression." Samuel handed him a turkey sandwich. "How do you feel?" "Terrified," Marcus admitted. "Like I just gave away my security for some philosophy that might be bullshit." "Good, terror means you're growing." Samuel bit into his sandwich. "You know what happened after I started practicing abundance thinking, really practicing it, living it, not just doing exercises?" "What?" "Opportunities started appearing. Not magic, not miracles, just doors opening that had always been there but I'd been too focused on scarcity to see." Samuel's eyes went distant. "A guy who ran a moving company used to walk past my corner every day. One day, after about 6 months of me genuinely blessing everyone, he stopped and asked if I wanted day work. Manual labor, cash under the table. I said yes. That's how you got off the street. That's how it started. I worked for him for 3 months, proved I was reliable. He offered me a real job, minimum wage but regular. I saved everything I could, slept at the shelter, ate cheap. 6 months later, I had enough for a security deposit on a room. Marcus felt something like hunger, but not for food, for the story's ending. And now? Now I run my own moving company, Samuel said quietly. Small operation, just me and 2 other guys. We're not getting rich, but we're making it. And every dollar I make, I'm grateful for, because I remember when a dollar felt like salvation. The revelation hit Marcus like physics. Samuel wasn't homeless anymore. He'd been dressing down, sitting on the street, living like he was still there. But he wasn't. He was coming back to teach what he'd learned. "Why didn't you tell me?" Marcus asked. "Would you have listened if I had?" Samuel met his eyes. "You needed to see me as one of you before you could hear me, just like I needed to see Joseph as one of me." Who was Joseph? A former CEO who lost everything in the 2008 crash, ended up on the street at 63 years old after a lifetime of success. And instead of letting it destroy him, he used it to learn something new about how reality works. Samuel finished his sandwich. He died 5 years ago, heart attack in his sleep at a shelter, but before he died, he made me promise to pass on what he taught me. That's when Marcus made a decision that seemed insane to everyone but himself. He decided to stop begging and start living like abundance was already true, even though he was still homeless, still broke, still sleeping on heating vents. The decision felt like jumping off a cliff without knowing if he could fly. The weekend brought rain and cold and fewer people on the streets. Marcus's new corner pulled in less money, but he kept blessing everyone who passed, kept seeing them as humans instead of marks, kept giving from the little he had, spare change to others, time to the young ones, advice to anyone who asked. Sunday evening, the owner of the Vietnamese restaurant stopped him on the street. Marcus recognized him. "Mr. Nguyen, always busy, always moving." "You're the guy who eats here sometimes," Mr. Nguyen said. Marcus braced himself for the complaint, for being asked to stop loitering, for whatever consequence was coming. "My dishwasher quit. You want the job?" Marcus stared. What?" "Dishwasher, night shift, cash, you interested?" Yes, I'm interested." "Start tomorrow, 6 p.m., don't be late." Just like that, an opportunity that would have seemed impossible a week ago. Marcus wanted to believe it was luck, coincidence, random chance. But Samuel's words echoed. Abundance thinking isn't magic. It's choosing to see and seize opportunities that were always there. Monday morning, Marcus met Samuel with the news. "That's excellent," Samuel said, "but here comes the hard part." "What hard part?" "I got a job." Now you have to keep practicing abundance while you're working, while you're tired, while your hands are raw from hot water, while your back aches. Samuel's face was serious. Because this is where most people fail. They get a little success and immediately revert to scarcity. They start hoarding hours, hoarding money, hoarding energy, and the hoarding contracts them back to where they started. What should I do instead? Keep giving, keep blessing, keep believing there's enough. Samuel paused. "And here's the test. I want you to give away half of your first paycheck." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "Half? I need to save for a room for." "I know what you need it for. Do it anyway." Samuel's voice was firm. "Trust the process. Prove to yourself that giving creates receiving, not the other way around." The week passed in a blur of dishwater and exhaustion. The work was hard, mindless, degrading in the way manual labor can be. But it was regular. It was income. It was structure. Friday night, Mr. Nguyen handed Marcus an envelope with $200 cash. More money than Marcus had held in months. His first instinct was to pocket it, protect it, hoard it. His survival brain screamed that giving any of it away was insane. But he'd committed to the experiment. Saturday morning, Marcus took $100 and went to the shelter. He found the kid from his old corner, the one with the dog, and handed him $50. "What's this for?" the kid asked, suspicious. "Pass it on when you can," Marcus said. He gave another 50 to the shelter itself, to help buy food for the weekend rush. The staff looked at him like he'd grown a second head. Walking out with $100 instead of 200, Marcus felt physically ill. What if he'd just thrown away his security deposit? What if Samuel was wrong? What if abundance thinking was just a story desperate people told themselves? But underneath the fear, something else stirred, a sense of lightness, of possibility, of having broken some invisible chain. What happened next proved that mindset isn't just psychology, it's physics. Monday morning, Mr. Nguyen pulled Marcus aside. "My day prep guy is moving to New York. You want more hours. Morning prep 6 to noon, then dishwashing 6 to midnight. Pays more." Marcus did the math. Double hours meant double pay. 400 a week instead of 200. Enough for a room and food and maybe, possibly, eventually, a life. "Yes," Marcus said, "thank you." That afternoon, Marcus found Samuel at their usual spot on 5th and Market. "It worked," Marcus said, still not quite believing it. "I gave away half and I got offered double hours." "It always works," Samuel said. "But not because the universe is rewarding you for good behavior. It works because abundance thinking opens you up to seeing and seizing opportunities. Scarcity thinking closes you down. You become tight, defensive, contracted. People feel that, doors close. But when you operate from abundance, when you give freely and trust there's more, you expand. People feel that too. Doors open." Marcus sat beside his old teacher. "I'm scared," he admitted. "Scared I'll mess it up, scared it won't last, scared I'll end up back here." "You might," Samuel said gently. "Life has no guarantees, but here's what I learned from Joseph. The scarcity mindset says I'll be happy when I have enough. The abundance mindset says I have enough, therefore I'm happy. One is a prison, the other is freedom. Even when you're homeless, even when you're broke, even when you're sleeping on heating vents." "Especially then," Samuel said, "because that's when it matters most. Anyone can feel abundant when they have abundance. The real practice is feeling abundant when you have nothing. That's when the mind gets rewired. That's when the transformation becomes permanent." Over the next 2 months, Marcus's life changed in ways that seemed impossible from where he'd started. The double shift was brutal, but it gave him purpose. He saved money. He found a room in a boarding house. He bought clothes that didn't smell like the street. But the bigger change was internal. He noticed himself blessing people automatically now, seeing everyone as human, giving freely of his time, his attention, his small amounts of extra money. And every time he gave, opportunities seemed to appear. A coworker mentioned a better room for rent. A regular customer offered to sell him a used bike for cheap transportation. The landlord of his boarding house asked if he wanted to do handyman work for reduced rent. Each opportunity built on the last. Each act of abundance thinking created more abundance. But the real test came 3 months after he'd started at the restaurant. Marcus was riding his bike home from the late shift when he saw a figure huddled in the doorway of a closed shop. Something about the posture, the desperation, the defeated slump reminded him of where he'd been. He stopped. The man was older, maybe 60, and clearly new to the street. Still had that stunned look of someone who couldn't quite believe this was their life now. "You okay?" Marcus asked. The man looked up. "Does it look like I'm okay?" Marcus recognized the anger, the shame masquerading as hostility. "I've been where you are," he said quietly. 3 months ago, I was sleeping on heating vents." "Good for you." The man's voice dripped sarcasm. "You want a medal." "I want to tell you something someone told me when I thought I was finished." Marcus sat down beside him, ignoring the cold concrete. You're not done. This isn't the end. It's just a chapter, and you get to choose what the next chapter says. Easy for you to say, you got out. Because I changed my mind first, Marcus said. I learned to think abundantly instead of scarcely. I learned to give instead of hoard. I learned to see doors instead of walls. The man laughed bitterly. Sounds like self-help bullshit. That's what I said too, Marcus smiled. But I was desperate enough to try it, are you? He spent the next hour telling the man about Samuel, about the exercises, about choosing to see abundance even in scarcity, about gardens instead of pies, about how your external reality reflects your internal mindset. The man listened, with the careful attention of someone drowning grabbing at a rope. When Marcus finally stood to leave, he pulled a $20 bill from his pocket. His survival brain still screamed that giving away money was insane, but he'd learned to not listen to that voice. Get some food, Marcus said, offering the bill. And tomorrow, if you want, meet me at 5th and Market at 9 a.m. I'll introduce you to someone who can help. The man took the money, tears streaming down his weathered face. Why are you doing this? Because someone did it for me, Marcus said. And because I finally understand what my teacher understood, we're not separate. Your suffering is my suffering. Your liberation is my liberation. There's no abundance for me unless there's abundance for all of us. That's when Marcus made a decision that seemed insane to everyone but himself. He decided to become a teacher of abundance thinking, to pass on what Samuel had passed on to him. Not as a formal thing, just as a practice, a way of living. The next morning, Marcus brought the man, whose name was David, to meet Samuel at 5th and Market. Samuel took one look at Marcus, at David, at the situation, and his face split into a huge smile. You ready to pay it forward? Samuel asked Marcus. I think so. Then I'm releasing you from being my student, Samuel said formally. You're a teacher now. You've learned the lessons. You've lived the transformation. Now you pass it on. David looked between them, confused. What's happening? You're about to learn something that will change your life, Marcus said. If you're willing, if you're ready, if you're desperate enough to try something that sounds like bullshit but actually works. He walked David through the first exercise, the hour of witnessing humanity without agenda. And as he taught, Marcus felt the lessons settle even deeper into his bones. You don't really understand something until you can teach it. You don't really possess knowledge until you give it away. Over the next months, Marcus became what Samuel had been for him. He kept his job at the restaurant, kept his room at the boarding house, kept building his small life. But he also spent his mornings at 5th and Market, teaching anyone who would listen about abundance thinking. Not everyone listened. Some people were too angry, too bitter, too invested in their story of victimhood to hear anything else. Marcus recognized that anger. He'd felt it himself. But he also learned that you can't force transformation. You can only offer it and let people choose. But some people listened. Some people tried the exercises. Some people began to shift from scarcity to abundance, from contraction to expansion, from seeing walls to seeing doors. And as they transformed, Marcus's own transformation deepened. He noticed himself automatically blessing difficult customers at the restaurant, automatically seeing the humanity in rude coworkers, automatically giving from whatever he had: time, attention, money, knowledge. Mr. Nguyen noticed the change too. 6 months after Marcus started, he pulled him aside. I'm opening a second location, Mr. Nguyen said. I need someone to manage it, someone I trust, someone who understands hard work in people. You interested? Marcus felt vertigo. Manager, regular salary, benefits, the kind of stability that had seemed impossible a year ago. Why me? He asked. Because you're different, Mr. Nguyen said. I've had a lot of employees. Most are just working for paycheck. But you work like you're grateful for the opportunity, like the work itself matters. That's rare. That's valuable. Marcus wanted to say yes immediately, but Samuel's teachings had gone deep. Can I think about it overnight? Of course. That evening, Marcus went to find Samuel at the boarding house where he'd told Marcus he lived. They sat on the stoop, watching the city move around them. Mr. Nguyen offered me a manager position, Marcus said. That's wonderful. Why don't you sound happy? Because I'm scared, Marcus admitted. Scared I'll fail, scared I don't deserve it, scared it will be taken away. Ah, Samuel said, the scarcity mind making its last stand. How do I fight it? You don't fight it, you notice it, you thank it for trying to protect you, then you choose differently. Samuel put a hand on Marcus's shoulder. Here's what Joseph told me when I was exactly where you are. The scarcity mind will never fully disappear. It's ancient. It kept our ancestors alive when resources were truly scarce. But you don't have to obey it. You can notice it, acknowledge it, and choose abundance anyway. How? By accepting the job with gratitude. By committing to running that restaurant with the same abundance mindset you've cultivated. By continuing to give, to bless, to see doors instead of walls. By trusting that you earned this opportunity not despite your homelessness, but because of what it taught you. Marcus sat with that. What did it teach me? Compassion, resilience, the difference between scarcity and abundance, the truth that your external circumstances don't determine your internal state. Your internal state determines how you experience your external circumstances. Samuel smiled. You learned what Joseph learned, what I learned, what everyone who makes this journey learns. You are not your circumstances. You are the consciousness that experiences circumstances. And consciousness can choose what it focuses on, what it believes, what it creates. What happened next proved that mindset isn't just psychology, it's physics. Marcus took the job. And in taking it, in choosing to believe he deserved it, in operating from abundance instead of scarcity, he became the thing he'd been practicing. The second restaurant opened 3 months later. Marcus managed it with the same principles he'd learned on the street, blessing difficult customers, seeing his staff as humans rather than resources, giving freely of his time and knowledge, trusting there was always enough. And there was. The restaurant thrived, Marcus thrived, but more importantly, he kept teaching. Every morning before his shift, he'd spend an hour at Fifth and Market, sitting with Samuel, talking to anyone who needed to hear about abundance thinking. David, the man Marcus had found in the doorway, got a job at a coffee shop, then a better job at an office, then started volunteering at the shelter, teaching others what Marcus had taught him. The ripple spread. 1 year after Marcus had first met Samuel, he sat on their corner watching the morning rush. How many people do you think we've taught? Marcus asked. Does it matter? Samuel replied. Joseph taught me, I taught you, you taught David, David taught 3 others. Those 3 taught who knows how many. The math isn't important. The practice is what matters. I've been thinking about something, Marcus said. I want to start a formal program, at the shelter, teaching abundance mindset to people experiencing homelessness. Samuel's laugh was delighted. You're ready for that? I think so. I've saved enough money. I could fund it myself for the first 6 months, see if it works. That's beautiful, but let me ask you, why? Marcus thought about his answer. Because I remember what it felt like to believe I was finished, to think there was no way out, to see the world as fundamentally scarce and hostile, and I remember how it felt when you showed me a different way. I want to give that gift to others. Even though some won't listen, even though some will take your money and time and give you nothing back. Especially then, Marcus said, because the practice isn't about what I get back, it's about what I give away. That's what you taught me. That's what abundance really means. Samuel stood and offered his hand to Marcus. Then I officially release you as my student. You've graduated, you understand. They shook hands, and Marcus felt the weight of responsibility and the lightness of purpose in equal measure. The program started small. 6 people meeting twice a week at the gospel mission. Marcus taught them the exercises Samuel had taught him, witnessing without agenda, blessing everyone, giving from scarcity, seeing opportunities instead of obstacles. Some dropped out, some stayed, and some transformed. 2 years after that first conversation with Samuel, Marcus stood in front of a room of 40 people, homeless and housed, volunteers and participants, teachers and students. The program had grown beyond his wildest imaginings. Local businesses had started donating. The city had taken notice. Other shelters wanted to replicate the model. But Marcus kept it simple. Keep the focus on the internal shift, not the external results. Keep teaching that abundance is a mindset, not a bank account. Keep demonstrating that you don't need to have abundance to think abundantly. In fact, thinking abundantly is what creates having abundance. Samuel sat in the back row, beaming. After the session, they walked to Fifth and Market, to the corner where it had all started. "I have something to tell you," Samuel said. "What?" "I'm sick, cancer, stage 4. I've got maybe 6 months." Marcus felt the ground shift beneath him. "No, you can't, we just started. There's so much more to do." "There's always more to do," Samuel said gently. "But the work doesn't depend on me. It doesn't even depend on you. It depends on everyone who learns to think abundantly and passes it on. That's how it works. That's how it's always worked. I'm not ready to lose you." "You're not losing me. You're losing my physical presence, but you have everything I taught you. You have the practice. You have the understanding." Samuel smiled. "And besides, scarcity thinking says death is an ending. Abundance thinking knows it's just a transformation." The 6 months passed too quickly and not quickly enough. Marcus visited Samuel in hospice, sat with him through pain and morphine and the slow dissolution of the body. But Samuel's mind stayed clear almost to the end. And in those final weeks, he told Marcus stories about Joseph, about other teachers in the lineage, about the long chain of abundance thinking passing from person to person, generation to generation. "It's an ancient practice," Samuel said one afternoon, his voice barely above a whisper. "Different cultures call it different things. Some call it gratitude, some call it faith, some call it recognizing your Buddha nature. But it's all the same truth. What you focus on expands. Scarcity or abundance, your choice creates your reality." "I'm going to miss you," Marcus said, tears streaming. "Then practice abundance thinking about my death," Samuel challenged gently. "Don't focus on what you're losing. Focus on what remains. Focus on what you gained. Focus on what you'll give to others. That's the practice. Even here, especially here." Samuel died on a Tuesday morning peacefully, with Marcus holding his hand. At the funeral, 40 people showed up. Homeless and housed, rich and poor, old and young. All lives touched by Samuel's teaching. All minds shifted from scarcity to abundance. David spoke. So did 3 others who'd been taught directly by Samuel. So did 10 more who'd been taught by Marcus. The ripples spreading outward, each person carrying the practice forward. Marcus stood at the microphone last, looking out at the faces, and understood finally what Samuel had meant about death being a transformation rather than an ending. "Samuel taught me that I wasn't my circumstances," Marcus said. "That the story I told about my life mattered more than the facts of my life. That abundance and scarcity were choices, not conditions. And that teaching this to others was the only way to truly possess it myself." He paused, feeling the weight of the moment. "So I'm making a commitment today. I'm going to spend the rest of my life teaching what Samuel taught me, not as a job, though it might become one, not for recognition, though it might bring that, but because this practice saved my life, and because the best way to honor my teacher is to become a teacher myself." That's when Marcus made a decision that seemed insane to everyone but himself. He quit his management job and devoted himself full-time to teaching abundance thinking to people experiencing homelessness. Mr. Nguyen thought he was crazy. His landlord thought he was irresponsible. Even David questioned the decision. But Marcus had learned to trust the process, to trust that operating from abundance would create abundance, to trust that the internal shift would manifest as external reality. He was right. Within 6 months, a foundation approached him about funding the program properly. Within a year, he was teaching at shelters across the city. Within 2 years, other cities wanted to learn the model. But Marcus kept his practice simple. Every morning, he still went to Fifth and Market and sat on that corner where Samuel had first taught him. Sometimes people stopped to talk. Sometimes they didn't. But Marcus sat there blessing everyone who passed, witnessing humanity, holding space for the possibility that minds could change and lives could transform. 5 years after Samuel's death, Marcus stood in a hotel conference room addressing 200 social workers, homeless advocates, and city officials from across the country. "We've been approaching homelessness wrong," he told them. "We've been focused solely on external solutions, housing, jobs, services. Those things matter, but they're not enough. Because if you don't address the internal state, the scarcity mindset, the shame, the belief that you're somehow broken or less than, then even when you get people housed, they often end up back on the street." He paused, let that sink in. "What my teacher Samuel taught me, what I've now taught to over 3,000 people, is that transformation starts internally. When you shift from scarcity thinking to abundance thinking, when you start seeing opportunities instead of obstacles, when you begin believing you have enough and are enough right now, that's when real change becomes possible." A hand went up. "But isn't that blaming homeless people for their situation, telling them it's their fault they're poor?" "No," Marcus said firmly. "It's not about blame, it's about power. Scarcity thinking says you're a victim of circumstances. Abundance thinking says you're a creator of your experience. One leaves you helpless, the other gives you agency. Both might be true in some ways, but only one opens doors." After the conference, Marcus walked back to his hotel and pulled out his phone. He had messages from David, now running an abundance mindset program in Baltimore, from 3 other former students running similar programs in different cities, from Mr. Nguyen, asking if Marcus wanted to come back and manage all 3 of his restaurants. He'd expanded successfully using the same abundance principles Marcus had demonstrated. Marcus smiled at that message. The universe offering him back what he'd given up, multiplied. But he wasn't interested in going backward. He was interested in going forward. He texted back, "Thank you, but I'm exactly where I need to be." Because he was. 10 years after that first conversation with Samuel, Marcus sat on the corner at Fifth and Market. The Starbucks had been renovated. The city had changed. But this corner remained his touchstone, the place he returned to remember where he'd started. A young woman approached hesitantly. She was clearly new to street life, still had that shocked disbelief that this was happening to her. "Excuse me," she said, "are you Marcus, the guy who teaches about abundance thinking?" "I am. I heard about you at the shelter. They said you used to be homeless, that you learned something that changed everything." Marcus patted the concrete beside him. "Sit down. Let me tell you about a man named Samuel who taught me that scarcity and abundance aren't facts about the world. They're choices about what to focus on." The woman sat, and Marcus began teaching her the first exercise, witnessing humanity without agenda. As he taught, he felt Samuel's presence and Joseph's presence, and the presence of all the teachers stretching back through time who'd understood this truth. What happened next proved that mindset isn't just psychology, it's physics. The woman began to cry, not from sadness but from recognition. She saw herself in Marcus's story, saw the possibility that her current circumstances weren't her permanent identity, saw that choice existed even when it seemed like everything had been taken away. "Will it work for me?" she asked. "It works for everyone who practices it," Marcus said. "But it's a practice, not a magic spell. You have to choose it daily, sometimes hourly, sometimes moment by moment. You have to keep choosing abundance when scarcity feels more real. Keep giving when hoarding feels safer. Keep blessing when cursing feels justified. That sounds hard. It is hard, but you know what's harder? Spending your whole life believing you're not enough, that there's not enough, that the world is fundamentally hostile and scarce. That's a prison. Abundance thinking is freedom. The woman nodded slowly. When do I start? Right now, Marcus said. For the next hour, I want you to sit here with me and watch people pass. Don't ask for anything. Don't judge them or yourself. Just witness. See each person as a full human being on their own journey, and notice how that feels different from seeing them as potential sources of money or help. They sat together as the morning crowd flowed past. Marcus watched the woman's face as she began to really see people, maybe for the first time since she'd ended up on the street. Saw the moment her hardness began to soften. Saw the first crack in her scarcity armor. This was the work. This was the practice. This was how transformation happened, one person, one moment, one choice at a time. As the sun climbed higher and the city woke fully to itself, Marcus felt profound gratitude. Gratitude for Samuel. Gratitude for Joseph. Gratitude for the long lineage of teachers who'd passed this wisdom forward. Gratitude for his own journey from scarcity to abundance, from victim to creator, from student to teacher. But most of all, gratitude for the simple truth that had transformed his life and now flowed through him to others. Your external reality reflects your internal mindset. Change your thinking, change your life. Not someday, not when circumstances align. Right now, right here, exactly as you are. The woman beside him took a deep breath and opened her eyes. I felt something, she whispered. I felt lighter. Marcus smiled. That's abundance thinking, that lightness, that opening, that sense that maybe, possibly, everything might be okay. Will it last? Only if you practice it. Only if you choose it again and again. Only if you eventually teach it to someone else. Marcus stood and offered his hand to help her up. The practice becomes permanent when you pass it on. That's the final lesson Samuel taught me. You don't really own abundance thinking until you give it away. The woman stood, and Marcus saw in her face the same tentative hope he'd felt a decade ago. The same fragile belief that maybe transformation was possible. The same willingness to try something that sounded crazy but might just work. Same time tomorrow, she asked. Same time tomorrow, Marcus confirmed. She walked away, and Marcus watched her go, carrying within her the seed of a transformation that might change her life the way it had changed his. Might ripple outward to touch others the way his transformation had rippled outward from Samuel's teaching. Or might not. Some seeds fell on stone, but some fell on fertile ground and grew into forests. Either way, Marcus's job was simple. Keep teaching, keep practicing, keep demonstrating that abundance thinking works regardless of circumstances. Keep being the proof that your mind creates your reality, not the other way around. Marcus packed up his small backpack. He still carried one, though now it held teaching materials rather than survival supplies, and began walking toward the community center where his afternoon workshop would begin. But he took the long route, the one that passed by the heating vent behind the library where he used to sleep. He stopped there for a moment, looking at the spot that had been his bed for so many cold nights. Someone else slept there now. He could see the flattened cardboard, the tucked-away blanket. Marcus pulled out a $20 bill and tucked it under the cardboard where the person would find it. No note, no agenda, just a gift from abundance to scarcity, from someone who remembered to someone still learning. The community center bustled with activity. His workshop had grown from 6 people to 60, and today they were discussing the hardest lesson: how to maintain abundance thinking when everything falls apart. I tried it, a man named Robert said, frustration thick in his voice. I tried blessing people. I tried seeing opportunities. I tried giving away money I couldn't afford to give. And you know what happened? I got robbed, lost everything I'd saved, ended up back at square one. The room went quiet. Everyone looked at Marcus, waiting to see how he'd respond to this challenge to the practice. "Tell me something," Marcus said. "After you got robbed, what story did you tell yourself?" "What do you mean?" "Did you tell yourself, see, I knew this abundant stuff was bullshit. The world is hostile and I'm a victim. Or did you tell yourself, this is a setback, but I still have my practice, I still have my mind, I still have the ability to choose how I respond?" Robert was quiet for a long moment. "The first one," he finally admitted. "And how did that story feel?" "Terrible, like I was drowning." "But now tell me the same event from an abundance mindset," Marcus challenged. "What would that story sound like?" Robert struggled with it, his face showing the mental effort. I guess it would be something like, I got robbed, which sucks. I lost my money, but I didn't lose what I learned. I know how to make money again because I know how to think abundantly. This is a test of the practice, not proof that the practice doesn't work." "How does that story feel?" "Better," Robert admitted reluctantly. "Still painful, but not drowning." "That's the practice," Marcus said to the whole room. "Abundance thinking doesn't prevent bad things from happening. Life happens, people get sick, relationships end, money gets stolen, jobs disappear. The practice isn't about controlling external events. It's about choosing your internal response to those events." He walked to the whiteboard and wrote 2 columns. Scarcity response to setback. I knew it wouldn't work. The universe is against me. I'm back where I started. There's no point trying. Contracts closes hardens. Abundance response to setback. This is information, not condemnation. I still have my mind in my practice. What can I learn from this? What's the opportunity hidden here? Expands, opens, adapts. Both responses are available in every moment, Marcus continued. Both are true in some way, but only one moves you forward. Only one keeps doors open. Only one allows for the possibility of transformation. A woman named Jennifer raised her hand. "But isn't that just toxic positivity? Just pretending everything is fine when it's not?" "No," Marcus said firmly. "Abundance thinking isn't about denying reality or pretending everything is fine. It's about choosing which aspect of reality to build your story from. When Robert got robbed, multiple things were true. He lost his money and he still had his practice. He experienced setback and he retained his ability to think and choose. Toxic positivity only acknowledges the second half. Scarcity thinking only acknowledges the first half. Abundance thinking holds both and chooses to build from what remains rather than what's lost." The discussion continued for another hour, people sharing their struggles and breakthroughs, their doubts and their small victories. Marcus listened more than he spoke, recognizing that his job wasn't to have all the answers but to hold space for people to find their own. After the workshop, a young man approached him. "Can I talk to you privately?" They stepped outside into the spring afternoon. The city hummed around them, indifferent and beautiful. "I'm thinking about giving up," the young man, his name was Alex, said quietly. "I've been practicing for 3 months. I've done the exercises, I've tried to think abundantly, but nothing's changed. I'm still homeless, still broke, still stuck." Marcus remembered feeling exactly this. The frustration when internal shifts didn't immediately create external changes. The temptation to give up and return to familiar suffering. "Tell me about your practice," Marcus said. "I bless people. I see opportunities. I give when I can. I try to focus on what I have instead of what I lack." "That's good, but let me ask you, when you do these practices, are you doing them to get something? Or are you doing them because they're the practices?" Alex looked confused. "What's the difference?" "Huge difference. If you're blessing people to manipulate the universe into giving you money, that's still scarcity thinking dressed up as abundance thinking. You're still operating from, I don't have enough and I need to get more. But if you're blessing people because blessing people is the abundant response to life, because it feels better than cursing them, because it opens your heart instead of closing it. Then you're actually practicing abundance. But Samuel told you abundance thinking would change your external reality. That's what you teach. It does change your external reality, Marcus agreed. But not through magic, not through cosmic manipulation. It changes your external reality because it changes you. When you genuinely shift from scarcity to abundance internally, you show up differently. You see different things. You take different actions. You radiate different energy, and people and opportunities respond to that. So it's not about the universe giving me what I want. It's about you becoming someone who can receive what the universe is already offering, Marcus corrected. Scarcity thinking makes you tight, defensive, closed. You walk past opportunities because you're too busy focusing on what's wrong. But abundance thinking makes you open, receptive, alert. You see the opportunities that were always there. Alex sat with that. I think I've been doing it wrong. You haven't been doing it wrong. You've been learning. This is part of the process. Marcus smiled. I went through the exact same frustration. I wanted abundance thinking to work like a vending machine, put in the right thoughts, get out the life I wanted. But it doesn't work that way. It works by transforming who you are, which then transforms what you experience. How long did it take you before things started changing externally? Honestly, some things changed within days, but the real transformation, the deep shift that became permanent, took about 2 years. Marcus watched Alex's face fall. I know that's not what you want to hear. We live in a culture that promises instant results, but real transformation takes time, takes practice, takes failing and starting over and failing again and still choosing abundance. 2 years, Alex said quietly. But here's the thing, Marcus added. Those 2 years passed anyway. I could have spent them in scarcity thinking, getting more bitter and closed and stuck. Or I could spend them in abundance thinking, gradually opening and expanding and transforming. The time passes either way. The question is who you'll be on the other side. Alex nodded slowly and Marcus saw the decision forming. Not certainty. Nothing about this practice promised certainty, but willingness. The willingness to keep trying even when results weren't immediate. The willingness to trust the process even when logic argued against it. I'll keep going, Alex said. Good, and Alex, Marcus put a hand on his shoulder. When you have moments of doubt, and you will, remember that doubt is okay. Doubt doesn't mean you're failing, it means you're human. The practice isn't about never doubting. It's about choosing abundance even when you doubt, especially when you doubt. That evening, Marcus returned to his small apartment. A one-bedroom in a building that had seen better days, but it was his. He'd lived there for 8 years now, and still sometimes woke up surprised that he had keys to a door, that he had a bed instead of a heating vent, that he had a shower he could use whenever he wanted. He made dinner, simple pasta, salad, bread, and sat at his small table looking out at the city lights. This view had replaced the ground-level view from the street, but he tried to never forget what the world looked like from down there. Tried to never let success insulate him from remembering. His phone buzzed, a text from David in Baltimore. Just had our biggest workshop yet, 80 people, 3 got jobs this week, 2 found housing, the ripple keeps spreading. Marcus smiled and texted back. That's because you're not just teaching theory, you're living proof, keep going. Another text, this one from Mr. Nguyen, thought you should know. That abundance principle you taught me, I used it to expand to a 4th location. We're hearing, if you know anyone who needs work. Marcus thought of Alex, of Robert, of Jennifer, of the 20 others currently in his program who needed jobs. He texted back names and numbers, connecting opportunity to need, demonstrating abundance in action. The ripples spreading. That night, lying in his bed, Marcus thought about the question he'd been asked at the conference. How do you measure success in this work? He hadn't had a good answer then. But lying here, watching shadows move across his ceiling, he thought maybe he did now. Success wasn't measured in the number of people housed or employed, though those things mattered. Success was measured in the number of minds shifted from scarcity to abundance, in the number of people who learned they had choice even when it seemed like everything had been taken away, in the number of moments when someone chose to bless instead of curse, to give instead of hoard, to see opportunity instead of obstacle. Success was measured in the ripples. Samuel had taught Marcus. Marcus had taught hundreds. Those hundreds had taught thousands. And somewhere in that geometric expansion, a different way of thinking about reality was spreading. Not replacing practical help, people still needed housing and jobs and health care, but supplementing it with internal transformation that made external help sustainable. Because Marcus had seen it happen too many times to doubt. Someone gets housed through external intervention but maintains scarcity thinking, and they often end up back on the street. The external change without internal change doesn't stick, but someone who shifts internally, who learns abundance thinking, that person can take any external improvement and build on it, can take a small opportunity and expand it, can take a setback and transform it into learning. The practice worked, not like magic, not instantly, not without effort, but it worked. Marcus's last thought before sleep was a blessing for everyone still on the streets tonight, for everyone sleeping on heating vents and under bridges and in doorways, for everyone who thought they were finished, who believed the story of scarcity, who couldn't yet see the possibility of transformation. May they find their Samuel, may they find their willingness, may they discover that scarcity and abundance are choices, not conditions. The next morning brought rain again, that same cold November rain that Marcus remembered from a decade ago. But now he walked through it to his car instead of huddling under minimal overhang. Now he drove to Fifth and Market instead of sleeping there. The young woman from yesterday, her name was Tanya, waited at the corner, soaked but present. "You came back," Marcus said, offering her the extra coffee he'd brought. "I said I would." She took the coffee gratefully. "I practiced last night, the witnessing, the blessing. It felt strange but good strange." "Tell me about strange." "Like I'd been wearing a mask so long I'd forgotten it was a mask, and when I took it off, even just for an hour, I remembered what my actual face felt like." Tanya sipped her coffee. "Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense. The scarcity mask protects us, but it also imprisons us. Taking it off is frightening and liberating at the same time." They sat together as the morning crowd navigated the rain. Marcus watched Tanya watch people, saw her face soften when she let herself see their humanity instead of just their potential use to her. "Can I ask you something?" Tanya said after a while. "Anything." "Did you ever want to give up, even after you'd seen it work?" Marcus laughed. "Constantly. Still do sometimes. The scarcity mind doesn't just disappear. It lurks in the background, waiting for hard moments to whisper, 'See, I told you this abundant stuff was bullshit.'" "How do you handle that?" "I notice it, I thank it for trying to protect me, then I choose differently." Marcus pulled out his wallet and showed her a small card he kept there. On it, in Samuel's handwriting, were the words, "What you focus on expands. Choose wisely." "Samuel gave me this a week before he died," Marcus said. "Told me I'd need the reminder, and he was right. On hard days, I pull this out and ask myself, am I focusing on what's wrong or what's possible, on what I've lost or what remains, on why it won't work or how it might work?" And that helps. Sometimes. Other times I just white-knuckle it, just force myself to keep choosing abundance even when scarcity feels more real. But that's the practice. It's not about feeling abundant all the time. It's about choosing the abundant response even when you don't feel it. What happened next proved that mindset isn't just psychology, it's physics, played out in real time. A businessman walked past, the same one who'd given Marcus $10 a decade ago. Marcus recognized him, though the man was grayer now, more stooped. "Good morning," Marcus called out. "Hope you have a blessed day." The man stopped, looked at Marcus, and his face showed recognition. "I know you. You used to beg here years ago." "I did." You look different, better. I am different, better, I hope. Marcus stood and offered his hand. Marcus. Paul, they shook hands. What changed? My mind changed. Everything else followed. Paul looked at Tanya at the corner, at Marcus standing in the rain looking prosperous and purposeful. I'm struggling, he said suddenly. Lost my job 6 months ago. Using up savings. Might lose my house. I walk past here every morning feeling like I'm one step away from where you used to be. Marcus felt the moment's weight, the universe offering him a chance to complete the circle. Can I tell you something that might sound crazy? Marcus asked. At this point, I'll listen to anything. The difference between you losing everything and you transforming this into an opportunity isn't external. It's internal. It's whether you approach this crisis from scarcity or abundance. I don't understand. Marcus spent the next 20 minutes telling Paul about Samuel, about abundance thinking, about the exercises and practices, about how changing your mind changes your reality not through magic but through physics, through literally rewiring your brain to see different possibilities, take different actions, radiate different energy. Paul listened with the desperate attention of a drowning man, and when Marcus finished, he asked the question everyone asked, but how do I start? Right now, Marcus said. For the next hour, I want you to bless everyone you see, every person on this street. Don't ask for anything. Don't judge them. Just genuinely wish them well. See what happens to your internal state. That's it. That's the beginning. After that, there are more practices, more lessons, more ways to rewire from scarcity to abundance. But it starts with this simple choice. Will you focus on what you've lost or what remains? On why you're doomed or how you might transform this? Paul stood there in the rain, and Marcus saw the same decision point he'd faced a decade ago. The same choice between familiar suffering and uncertain transformation. The same leap that required faith without evidence. Okay, Paul finally said, I'll try it. Marcus gave Paul his card, a real business card now with his name and abundance mindset coaching printed professionally. Come to the community center tonight, 6 p.m. I'm teaching a workshop. It's free. Come learn what I learned. After Paul left, Tanya turned to Marcus with wide eyes. Did that just happen? Did you just recruit a businessman into abundance thinking? I offered him what Samuel offered me, what I'm offering you. He gets to choose whether to accept it, Marcus smiled. But yes, that just happened, and that's how the ripples spread. Not through institutions or programs, though those help, but through person-to-person transmission, through lived example, through someone who's been transformed teaching someone ready to be transformed. The rain continued. The city moved around them, and Marcus felt profound gratitude for his life, not despite the years of homelessness, but because of what they'd taught him, because of how they'd cracked him open to learn what Samuel had to teach. That evening the community center overflowed. Paul came, nervous but present. Alex came, recommitted to the practice. Robert came, ready to try again after his setback. Jennifer came with questions. David drove up from Baltimore with 3 of his students, and Tanya came, just beginning her journey. Marcus stood in front of them all and felt the weight of responsibility and the lightness of purpose. Welcome, he began. You're here because some part of you suspects that what you've been thinking about reality might not be the whole truth. You're here because you're willing to consider that scarcity and abundance aren't facts about the world. They're choices about what to focus on. He paused, looking at each face. I can't promise you that abundance thinking will solve all your problems. I can't promise you instant results or easy transformations. What I can promise you is this. If you practice what I'm about to teach you, if you really practice it, not just think about it or agree with it intellectually, but actually do the exercises and make the choices and live the principles, your life will change. Not because the universe rewards good thinking, but because you'll change. And when you change, everything changes. He taught them the first exercise, the one Samuel had taught him. An hour of witnessing humanity without agenda. An hour of seeing everyone as complete human beings rather than potential sources of help or harm. An hour of remembering their own humanity in the process. And as he taught, Marcus felt Samuel's presence, felt Joseph's presence, felt the presence of all the teachers stretching back through time who'd understood this simple, profound truth. Your mind creates your reality. Not completely. You can't think away cancer or poverty or injustice. But your mind creates your experience of reality, and your experience is what you actually live. Choose wisely. After the workshop, Marcus drove home through rain that had finally stopped. The city gleamed with wetness, reflected lights making everything look renewed. His phone rang, an unknown number. "Marcus, this is Rebecca." Marcus's heart stopped. "Rebecca, Samuel's Rebecca." "Yes," her voice was thick with emotion. "I found your name in my father's papers. He kept notes about you, about the work you're doing. I needed to thank you." "Thank me." For giving him purpose in his final years, for learning what he had to teach, for carrying it forward. She paused. "He left me a letter, to be opened after his death. He told me about Joseph, about the lineage, about how teaching abundance thinking gave him back his life even though he never became rich or famous. How it let him die knowing he'd passed something valuable forward." Marcus pulled over, unable to drive through tears. "He was so proud of you," Rebecca continued. "So grateful that you listened, so hopeful about the ripples you'd create." They talked for an hour. Rebecca told him about growing up with Samuel, about the man he'd been before the layoff, about her own journey of forgiveness and understanding. And Marcus told her about the program, about the thousands of lives touched, about how her father's teaching lived on through all of them. When they finally hung up, Marcus sat in his car watching the city and understanding something new. The transformation wasn't just his, wasn't just the people he taught, wasn't even just the ripples spreading outward. The transformation was the teaching itself, alive, growing, adapting, spreading person to person like seeds on the wind. Some landing on stone, some landing on fertile ground, but all of them carrying the same essential truth. Scarcity and abundance are choices, not conditions. What you focus on expands. Your mind creates your experience of reality. Change your thinking, change your life. Simple, profound, ancient, forever new. Marcus started his car and drove home, grateful for the rain, grateful for the city, grateful for the long journey from that cold corner to this moment of understanding. The story wasn't over, would never be over, because abundance thinking wasn't a destination, it was a practice. A choice made new each morning, a garden tended daily, a ripple spreading endlessly outward. And somewhere in Philadelphia tonight, someone was sleeping on a heating vent, thinking their story was finished, thinking scarcity was fact rather than choice, thinking transformation was impossible. But tomorrow, maybe someone would sit down beside them and say, "Let me tell you about a different way to think about reality." And maybe they'd listen. And maybe they'd try it. And maybe they'd discover what Marcus discovered, what Samuel discovered, what Joseph discovered, what countless others had discovered across time. You are not your circumstances. You are the consciousness that experiences circumstances, and consciousness can choose. Always. Even now. Especially now.